Hey there, folks. Welcome to today's episode of the Strategy and Leadership Podcast. I am very excited for today's conversation. My guest today is Steve Robinson, so also known as the husband of Diane. He is a speaker, consultant, author. Covert Cows is the name of his book, and you might also recognize the name because he was the former executive vice president and chief marketing officer at Chick-fil-A for 35 years. Steve, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you, Anthony. Great to be
Uh,
with you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for making the time. It's so cool. I mean, obviously, with such an iconic brand that is so well known, that's gone through an evolution and one that's been well known, it must be quite the journey. So I'd love to obviously talk about that, but why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about you, your life, how you got to here, and I'll get into some questions.
Sure. Um, I grew up in South Alabama, LA, down near Gulf Shores, a little town called Foley, Alabama. And I was the only son of a family of four. And my father was an entrepreneur. He ran a hybrid seed corn farming business. The importance of that was I saw up close what it was like to be a self-employed entrepreneur trying to make a go of it. I not only worked with him, I traveled with him, and I became fascinated. Even though he was an amazing mechanical engineer and terrific at what he did, I became fascinated with the whole process, sales and marketing. Went to Auburn University in Alabama, and that's where I met Diane on a blind date. And we just, as I told you earlier, we just celebrated 52 years of marriage yesterday. Um, And 4 days after we graduated, we headed off to Northwestern. We got married and headed off to Northwestern University. So within 2 weeks of graduating from Auburn, we are in Evanston, Illinois, a newlywed couple. And I majored in advertising and journalism at the Medill School of Journalism. First job out of there in 1973 was with Texas Instruments in their brand new semiconductor calculator division. And they're making things no bigger than this, which was revolutionary, but all they did was calculate. But I was hired to help market the high-end calculators for scientists, mathematicians, engineers, etc. There about a year, got a phone call from the director of marketing, Six Flags Over Texas, who was the brother of a Northwestern classmate of mine. He had an opening at the park. Short of that story is I spent one full Saturday interviewing with him, and I joined Six Flags. They really they fascinated because they were a strong branding and a strong marketing company. And even though I'd been at TI about a year, I discovered that marketing was kind of an uphill climb in the TI environment. Um, I was with Six Flags 7 years at three different properties. In the last 4 years, I was director of marketing at Six Flags over Georgia in Atlanta. During that window, we had our children who are now grown adults with their families of their own, but my daughter and my son. And I was quite frankly having a ball at Six Flags over Atlanta. We were enjoying a lot of success. Um, but in the summer of 1980, I get a phone call from the COO of Chick-fil-A. Now, for those who don't know, Chick-fil-A started exclusively in malls. At the time he called me, they had a total menu of 7 items, featuring, of course, the hero sandwich. They had about 100 stores, sales of 100, about $80 million, about under 100 million. And I'd met Jimmy. His name was Jimmy Collins. I'd met him a couple of years earlier because I tried to convince him to build a restaurant inside the park.
Mm.
Got very close, had a site, had a layout, but that deal didn't happen. So it's 2 years since that deal fell through the crack that he's calling me in August of 1980. And Jimmy says, Steve, I know you got a good thing going at Six Flags, but we don't have a marketing department. We're looking for a marketing director. Your name keeps coming up, and I wanted to know if you'd have an interest in talking to us. Now, initially, Anthony, when he said that, uh, my first reaction in the back of my mind was, I know you don't have a marketing department, or you probably would have done that deal with me 2 years ago. But I was, but I knew enough about him because of that experience that I was fascinated with the company, what that opportunity might represent. Six Flags was publicly owned. Texas Instruments was publicly owned, but Chick-fil-A was still privately owned by the original founder. And I love their food. I like their operating model, which we can discuss in a little bit. I like their values, and I had gotten to know Jimmy and Truett Cathy, the founder, and I like them. So I told him, sure, let's talk. Now, probably like you and many of your listeners, you would think, okay, even if this doesn't work out, a few days invested in interviewing can't hurt. You got to learn something. And so I told him yes, and I started the process. I will fast forward. It's almost 5 months later, and I'm still interviewing. And in early December, I'm sitting in the office of the founder, Truett Cathy. I'm doing all this stealth because I do like the job I have. And I finally looked at Truett about an hour into the interview session with him, which was my second one. And I said, Truett, what are you looking for in the ideal marketing candidate? Because this is getting a little cumbersome. And I'm just curious whether you think I'm your guy. And there was this long pause. And Anthony put down his Chick-fil-A sandwich, which was, of course, our lunch. And he says, I have absolutely no idea. All I know is whatever it is, I don't want to do it. But I do know this, which I found pretty odd. He says, I do know this. I trust Jimmy and others to figure out whether you can do the work. I'm more interested in who you are. I want to know that we can trust each other, we can have fun together. And if we make a decision to invite you here, it would be our expectation you'll never go anywhere else. Now, I'm 30 years old. I've already had 4 different jobs in 2 different companies. And that statement was a paradigm buster. Then he said, the most important decisions we make here are who we hire, who we invite to join the organization. Because we don't train culture here, we hire it. And I said, okay. I mean, he had a mouthful and it was obviously well rehearsed. So when do you think you might make a decision, Truett? He said, I don't know. I'll talk to Jimmy and we'll let you know. Well, I tell you that long story because 2 weeks later they did invite me to join Chick-fil-A. I went to work for him in January of 1981. He was right. He did not know what I needed to do. That wasn't his problem. He was counting on Jimmy to figure that out. And when I walked in there, Anthony, I had a clean sheet of paper. But I did not have a vacuum culture. I had an incredibly healthy culture. And reflected in that conversation, I just summarized a culture that was very clear, clear sense of purpose, clear sense of values, long-term horizon. And as his answers reflected, and I learned over the first 2 or 3 years, a culture where if Truett and Jimmy invited you into the business, they trusted you, they empowered you, and they left you alone. And even though, as I share in my book, I made my share of mistakes, they never did anything to undermine my confidence in them. And apparently, I never did anything that undermined their confidence in me. And it was the culture and the incredible opportunity to not only do marketing, but to shape a brand that resulted in me having a 35-year career. Little did I know in December of 1980. So that's
I
a
mean, he
real
did
quick.
warn you. He said you're not going anywhere after this. And what
He
really
did warn
strikes
me,
me is
and
he
and
did say it.
his
So
Their philosophy is if we make the right choice, whether it's a staff member or a Chick-fil-A restaurant operator, our expectation is they won't go anywhere. But think about that. Think about the experience that develops, the institutional knowledge, kind of the internal body language of knowing how to get stuff done and how people think and what are the cultural priorities in the business that shapes decision making. The longer people are there, the clearer all those things get. And what I learned is that innovation is at a higher level. Innovation is faster. Decision making is faster, and it's closer to the customer because people aren't always running to the owner or the COO.
What I take away from that, first of all, thank you, because I think that's so cool to just understand, like, you see the brand, you see what it is now, in 2024, like, evolved and grown into what it is, but really into the mindset of an owner. And I think in 2024, and you see tech companies and how they think, it's making decisions fast, like fast, fast, fast. Whereas the insurance kind of approach was like, make a decision slow, make sure it's right. But because it
Yeah,
was rooted, and it's, the way I thought about it is, if you have all of those people, the roots are deep, the tree is strong. And so, yes, it takes a little bit more time on the front end, but the quality is there like forever,
yeah,
which results in, to your point, better innovation, better
yeah,
collaboration, better trust, and ultimately
yeah.
a better experience for the customer.
Well, as I share in my book, Covert Cows and Chick-fil-A, the paradigm of Chick-fil-A kind of changes what most people think. Most people spend a lot of time and energy on strategy and tactics and finances. Um, those things are important, but at Chick-fil-A, they all follow clarity of culture. And I went there 2 years, and we went through the 1982 financial crisis. A lot of your viewers and listeners may not have experienced that, but that was back in the days of Jimmy Carter. Price of money got up to 18%. Mortgages were 16, 17%. It was nuts. The mall business stopped. And that's where we were. Retail sales crashed over 30%. We have a major cash flow problem. I won't bore you with all the details that are in my book, but we went off for 3 or 4 days trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to handle this cash flow issue? Because it was really the first cash crisis Chick-fil-A had ever had. And we did all the things you would traditionally think leadership would and should do. Tighten the budget, froze hiring, froze any more store commitments. Um, and about 2/3 into the first day, we're sitting there staring at each other. And we realized, with, quite frankly, the urging of one of Truett's sons, over half of the staff and over half the operators have been with us less than 2 years now. How are they looking at this crisis? And how do they think we're looking at this crisis? And most of them probably don't know. So, Truett, what's important to you needs to be reflected in how we reply to this crisis, not only in terms of strategy and finances, but in terms of what is the overall message for this organization when we're in tough times. And at the next 2 days of that meeting off-site, we wrote the Chick-fil-A corporate purpose. By listening to Truett, trying to draw out from him what was really important. Why do you go to work? What motivates you about Chick-fil-A to go to work? What's your long-term vision for Chick-fil-A? And that corporate purpose has not changed by one word since we wrote it in 1982. To glorify God by being a faithful steward of all that is entrusted to us and have a positive influence on all who come in contact with Chick-fil-A. We did not share that with staff and operators for a couple of weeks. We thought about it, we prayed about it. We then came back and unpacked the decisions we'd made about the strategy and the finances in the business. And Anthony, it was like a balloon that had been up in the air, kind of wayward, and all of a sudden everything kind of came down, settled down. People became incredibly focused, calm. And the next year we had I want to get this right, we had a 36% sales increase, same store sales increase of 29%. Now, the stores are still in malls. Retail sales still stink, but people within the Chick-fil-A family understood, okay, that's why we exist. I can get into that. Truett and his group, his leadership group, are committed to doing all they can to keep us financially healthy. If we survive it, fine. Truett's attitude was the business was a gift from God. Let's steward it really, really well. And if we survive it and we continue and we're blessed, terrific. And I don't know that there was any of us there in 1982, um, as you can tell, that will ever forget that experience, what those words mean. That corporate purpose, as you might guess, is constantly preached and story told about throughout Chick-fil-A all the time. And I quite frankly, I remind people who are new to Chick-fil-A, besides helping them understand the story I just shared, even though short Kathy passed away in 2014, in a very real sense, you still work for him because the corporate purpose and the values of the business still reflect what was important to him. His family still owns Chick-fil-A. And if you can have alignment with what's really important to Truett and the Kathy family, then you're going to make better decisions. You're going to have more freedom to innovate, and you're probably going to even have not only a longer career but a platform for more personal influence and personal ministry of your own, which is all true. So again, kind of the foundational stories of Chick-fil-A are so important, and therefore I've unpacked them early because if you don't understand the owner and if you don't understand what was important to the owner and his family, then you really don't understand who Chick-fil-A is.
Yeah. No, I absolutely get that. And I think it's just, I mean, it's fascinating to hear. And again, going back to the speed, but what I really took away is that idea of stewardship. Like the brand of Chick-fil-A, the relationship with Chick-fil-A is it's so far beyond transactional. And that's one of the things I'm
That's
taking
correct.
away is that it is entrenched in that, like, even if the leader is gone or the owner, like, like really, because those words are everlasting, because the business is purpose, even if it is, and with no obviously disrespect or minimalism, like you're selling food, right? You're selling hamburgers, and of course there's way more to that, but something like that has, when you're so deeply connected to purpose, allows the I'll use the word tribalism. It allows the commitment and care from your staff, and like that focus of like, hey, why are we here? We're here to
Yep.
support people,
Yep.
give them agency, create something that's impactful. So I of course want to ask you more about the story. Let's shift gears in the couple minutes that we have left here. 35 years in marketing, coming up with a phenomenal campaign, building this exceptional brand, that in itself will live on for a long time. What I don't even know what to ask. I kind of want to ask what guided you in the marketing function. I kind of want to ask, what were some of the coolest and most rewarding parts of doing that? Either that is like the creative that you came with, the campaigns that you came with, or the process to it. But what do you want to share about the story of your marketing journey, building a brand,
Yeah.
building from
Yeah.
100 million to where it is now?
Yeah. Well, the first point I will make, and you touched on when you used the word transactional. When I joined Chick-fil-A, they behaved much like all the other fast food brands. They were transactional. They were using price and deals and coupons to try to drive traffic. And I walked into that environment. I walked into that industry, and some of that was going on at Six Flags. So, okay, I get it. And most marketing even today is still very transactional focused. And we had 1982 was a big year. During that year, we did a transactional promotion using coupons, using direct mail, newspaper inserts to kind of counteract what McDonald's had done when they came out with their chicken sandwich. And the promotion was called First and Best. Hey, wake up! Chick-fil-A is still the first and still the best. And we had offers to try to drive traffic. Well, it overperformed. People over redeemed and it busted the budget. And so at the same time we're going through the financial crisis, the promotion put additional cash flow strain on the business. And so one of the many takeaways that my team and I took away from that is, wait a second, our food is worth full price. We got to figure out how to market this business and grow the business, grow volume, grow the brand, but we need to do it differently than the rest of the industry. And here's a man who owns a business asking us to have a positive influence on all that come in contact with Chick-fil-A. Well, the positive influence is not always having your hand out. If I give you this, I want your money. How about building relationships with people? So the first major principle shift in marketing at Chick-fil-A that experience motivated was the paradigm shift, a business and a brand that focuses on building relationships, not chase transactions. And so we started using free food distribution, sampling, um, getting engaged in the community, service in the community, free food to charitable organizations, policemen, firemen, um, just basically exercising generosity without a deal attached to it. Over time, we also exercise generosity through hospitality, which took many years to develop and refine and train. And so the evolution of the brand is rooted principally in those two core values: build relationships rather than transactions, and have a brand that extends generosity, hospitality, and looks at people in their eye no matter where they are, in the restaurant, drive through, at a football game, in a fire, doesn't matter, actually connect with people and serve them and exceed their expectations when they do give us money. And so the entire business is engineered around those fundamental two suppositions. If we're going to have positive influence on people, we're going to focus on building relationships, not transactions, and we're going to figure out how we can be generous, not only financially and with food, but with interaction, hospitality. And if there's ever a business that desires to represent grace, it's Chick-fil-A. And we actually adopted a brand purpose statement in the early 2000s for Chick-fil-A to be a brand where good meets gracious. Good food, good experience, good environment. We actually meet you, we connect with you, you can expect it. And oh, by the way, we're going to surprise you because we're actually going to act like we care. We're going to connect with you, and we're going to do our best to extend hospitality that you would not expect in a fast food environment. And that's kind of the evolution of the brand, which is far more than traditional marketing. Um, so that I would say, and the cow campaign came out of that because we went to the agency and said, we don't want to show food. We don't want to show price. We want to make people smile. We want to do something that entertains people, preferably funny, that will make their day better and emotionally connect with them, build a relationship with them, even through advertising. And the agency they hit the home run in 1996 when the first billboard came out behind me, Eat More Chicken. And the evolution of that campaign when I left had run 22 years. Um, and that I would say that campaign obviously had a major role in helping to put Chick-fil-A on the map. We started going into niches in the community where we could really build relationships like college sports, campuses, hospitals, universities, airports, getting the brand to where people were, and becoming a place of rest, which is what restaurant means, a place of rest. um, not only on their street corners, but other places where, people live and breathe. So that's the key differences in the marketing philosophy, the brand philosophy at Chick-fil-A. And some years after all that started, probably in the mid 2000s, there was a book came out called Blue Ocean Strategy, which after I read it, I realized, well, this is kind of what we're doing. The basic supposition was the best place on a lake or best place out in the ocean is where there are no other boats.
Mm.
And how do you put your brand in that space where the water is still and blue and you can do your own thing? And doesn't matter what the other boats are doing around you, they do not disturb your brand. And you don't compete with those brands. You become distinctive and unique in that space. And that's the focus we really started to take even more aggressively. And you might add, well, what was the upshot of that? And I would say one word, renegade. When we would consider brand and marketing strategies at Chick-fil-A, the question was always be, what are the other guys doing? Well, we don't want to do whatever that is. So let's make sure our innovation doesn't look and smell and behave like the rest of the category. So in that sense, the cows, and thus my book, Covert Cows, the cows represent a renegade brand in the way they behaved. Does that help?
Awesome. I think, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so much packed in that, so I'm trying to like digest all of it. But when we think of like being in service, right, and you hear servant leadership, but it's really like, hey, are we just serving our customers, or are we serving our people, are we serving our community, and being hyper connected to
It
the
all starts
purpose?
in house. It all starts in house.
Exactly. And then
And,
being
and
able to recognize, like, what is the purpose. And then what I think is interesting or just valuable is that the brand purpose aligning with your mission, and then how you put that together as like enduring, not only supports the people that are working there, but even your agency. You said, hey, we don't want to just be transactional. So then that was able to guide them. So when in strategic planning, when
yep,
we talk
yep.
about, hey,
You
mission
just,
and vision is so critical,
you
it
just use
guides
it.
everybody that works in your organization.
That is correct. You just use the key word enduring. And I discussed that in the book. Um, I think everybody out there that's involved in marketing branding wants an enduring brand. And we kind of discovered that the more endearing you made Chick-fil-A, the more enduring it was going to be.
Hmm.
And so, how do the cows become endearing? How do the interactions with customers become endearing? How does the environment within the restaurant become endearing to the team members? Um, because as people truly feel like they are being valued and genuinely served, then that's how you build an enduring brand. Now, I have to tell you, one of the reasons we were able to do all this is because back in the 60s, Truett made the decision to have a leadership model in the restaurant that is also renegade. Chick-fil-A owns all the restaurants. They pick the sites, they build the restaurants, they equip them, and they sublease the restaurant to an independent contractor, which they call operators. And the operator only currently they only put up $10,000 of earnest money. They are not a equity partner. They're a sweat equity partner. They have to be in the business, leading that business, mentoring those team members, making sure the customers are experiencing the Chick-fil-A promise of where good meets gracious, genuine caring. And the net, I won't take you through the whole deal, is that operator's income is half of the pre-tax net profit of the store.
Okay.
So as I attract better team members, keep better team members, train them better, give customers better experiences, keep more of my customers than lose, I win. Net, as I grow the business, my personal income grows with it. And of course, the other half net profit is going to Chick-fil-A Inc. Um, so that has attracted, still attracts a superior leader in every restaurant. And those men and women are capable of doing the kind of stuff we're talking about. They're capable of building a marketing team within their restaurants, a hospitality team within their restaurants, as well as operational excellence, and having the right kind of team leaders for that. Typical Chick-fil-A operator now probably has anywhere from 6 to 8 full-time salaried team managers, plus their hourly employees, and probably in the neighborhood of 125 to 150 team members. That's a big business. Um,
Yeah.
and so this whole thing of culture that we started with must be able to permeate and grow roots in every store. And if you don't have, if you have a lot of operator leadership turnover in the restaurants, almost impossible. But operator turnover is less than 3% a year. These men and women stay. The deal is generous, obviously, and I like to say it's genius because um, the genius of the deal keeps stable, strong leadership in every restaurant. And because of them, Chick-fil-A is able to do some things that a lot of brands in the fast food business they just can't do.
Yeah. That's awesome. Fascinating. I think it's super cool just building a company that has such impact up, down, and across, and that lasts for a long time. So, Steve, I just appreciate you just sharing your story today. It's been just super fun, eye-opening, and I think for our listeners to take away just, how can they build those. I don't want to even call it system because you weren't building it to build it as a system. It was just how you did it. It was like in you. But I think it's that really guided the organization. So, Steve,
The systems are there. The systems are there,
yeah,
but
of course.
systems follow culture and follow strategy.
Absolutely. So, thank you, Steve. I appreciate the chat today. I'm sure we could chat for much, much longer. Really quick, where can people connect with you and where can they pick up the book?
Well, the book is on Amazon. Again, it's Covert Cows and Chick-fil-A. I think it's also available through Bulk Books. And Walmart has had it. I don't know if they have it right now. And I'm on LinkedIn. If people want to look me up there, they'll find me there. And I have a website, srobinsonconsulting.com.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate just appreciate you sharing. And one thing we didn't talk about, just so people understand the scale and gravity of the lessons in the book. The company going from, like you said, just shy of 100 million to now well over 10 billion, if not more. So a lot of great.
Last year was 22 billion in sales.
22 billion. So who's counting? But yes, we're counting, and it's quite a bit. Awesome. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. Thanks for being
You're
on the show
welcome,
today.
Tony.
It was a blast.
You're welcome,
to chat.
Anthony. I appreciate it.
Folks,
Appreciate
my
it.
guest today, Steve Robinson, who is the former Executive Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer at Chick-fil-A. Crazy to me, crazy cool to hear about an organization from such relatively humble beginnings, although 80 million is not small, to the size and impact that it's done. And at the end of the day, it translates to smart, intentional decision-making, care for the people, the organization, and the impact, and recognizing the opportunity of being a renegade, so to speak, and moving out into blue ocean. So as you have the conversations with your team, say, hey, are we making a decision for today, or are we making a decision for the next 50 odd years? I think if leaders and organizations had the longer term impact, that servant attitude, and really created a great place for everybody involved, not only would the world be a better place, but I think there's more money to be made in the process. So thanks again for watching. Thanks for listening. My name is Anthony Taylor. This has been the Strategy and Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider rating it or sharing it with somebody you know. It helps us get these great pearls of wisdom in the hands of more folks. So once again, thanks for being here. I appreciate you, and see you next time.